All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to present to you Rosangela Malachias. She has a PhD in communication sciences at AQRA School of Communications and Arts at the University of Sao Paulo with a grant from the Roichi Sasakawa Fund in Japan. She was also a Fulbright Fellow, Hobart H. Humphrey Program at the University of Maryland College Park, Philip Merrill College of Journalism, United States. She has a master's in integration of Latin America by Prolam USP, KPIS scholarship, having conducted research in Havana, Cuba. She is a researcher at En Periferias Research Group, IEA USP, and NEINB USP. Okay, and she is an adjunct professor at the State University of Rio de Janeiro, Faculty of Education at Baixada Fluminense in the Department of Sciences and Fundamentals of Education. She's a permanent member of the graduate program in education, contemporary context, and popular demands at the Federal Rural University of Rio de Janeiro, Line 3, Education and Ethnic Racial Diversities, postdoctoral held at the UNESCO chair at the Methodist University of Sao Paulo Citizen Communication Line in Spaces located in Media Region. She's a coordinator of the Afro Diaspora Research Center on Black Women and Audiovisual Culture and Communication in urban peripheries linked to Promovidi, FEB, social movements, differences, and education program. I am happy to present to you now Dr. Rosangela Malachias, her presentation on Afro Diasporas Research Group, identifying women leaders in education. Dr. Rosa, this is now your time.
Good evening for you. Good morning for people here. Thank you so much, Professor Arceli Rosario, for your confidence to invite me. You know that English is not my first language, but today I hope to share with you some information, some knowledge that we have in the Afro Diasporas Research Group, where I am coordinator. I will do a talk explaining how this group was born and what kind of research we do, what kind of research we do, and we decided, because I invited this PhD student, Professor Ellen Anizsewnski, to share with you her research that was one of the work from Afro Diasporas Research Center. So we can start now. This here. Wait a minute. Okay. Professor Rosario introduced me already, but I would like to show you. I will try to open the slides. If you can see on the left, there is a painting. This is the Afro Diaspora symbol. You can see a lot of children, Black children, they are looking to the Africa map. This choice was because this painting talks about education. How can we teach about African and African Brazilian histories to Brazilian people in order to face and combat the racism, the structural racism. This work has a story. So in 2007, I was researcher in University of São Paulo, and I received an invitation to present a paper on the first WLE conference, Women Leading Education Conference, that was created by Professor Helen Soberhardt with support of the Superintendents American School Association. And this conference took place in Italy, Rome. So in that moment, WLE was launched as a group of scholars, most of us women from different parts of the world, some men also, but most of us, because I belong to the group, so women, to issue and call women from around the world to address issues of social justice, equity, and advancement in K-12 and higher education. There in Italy, the group decided to organize biannual conferences. So we had already in 2009 in Germany, 2011 in Greece, 2013 Ghana, 2015 in New Zealand, 2017 here in Brazil, 2019 in UK, 2021 we decided to cancel because of the pandemic, but we hope to be in Philippines in 2022. Professor Arceli Rosario will be the host coordinator. So in 2015, I was hired to be a professor at Rio de Janeiro State University. In this same year, as I showed you before, we had the conference in New Zealand. In that moment, I decided to apply to be host coordinator here in Brazil. So it's necessary to show you Brazilian map, because you can know that we have 27 states. Brazil is a large country and also rich country, but really we are living difficult moments. Today we have 508,000 deaths of COVID. This is so sad because of bad administration. And that is sad because Brazil has knowledge in vaccination. So we hope to win this pandemic and to be better in the future. You can see the Rio de Janeiro state map where I work. And in yellow, you can see a region called Baixada Fluminense. Sorry, because I didn't talk the title of my presentation. So from Baixada Fluminense, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, to the world, Afro-diasporas producing qualitative and anti-racist research. So in yellow, you can see Baixada Fluminense. Baixada has 12 inner cities. Baixada Fluminense is also known because of inequalities, disparities, violence, especially because hegemonic media only shows the bad sides of the region. It's important to show these problems. It's really important because there is an absence of public policies, but also it's very important to show how people there have many, people in Baixada Fluminense have, I am a little nervous, but there are a lot of social movements, cultural movements. Baixada Fluminense produces a lot of films. We have beautiful places, historical areas to know, and also Baixada Fluminense has workers, women and men who work, sometimes most of them in Rio de Janeiro city. So this is a population who struggle daily to survive. In 2016, I decided to create Afro Diaspora's research group because I have to produce knowledge about the region and to show people who would come to Brazil in 2017 in our conference in Duque de Caxias city. So this research group was, in the first moment, created only by me, by myself, and one professor called Janaína. As I told, 12 cities in Baixada Fluminense. Low income, absence of public policies, violence, but as I told, is also a place where people develop a lot of cultural issues and resistance. So it is essential to explain that in Brazil, the concept of leadership is not regularly employed in education courses, but often it appears in religious, business, administrations, and economic fields. This fact became an opportunity to start local studies searching for understanding of female leadership in formal and non-formal education. So the Afro diasporas, here you can see better the painting. The first proposal of the research group is to build knowledge and refuse stereotypes and colonial beliefs that still appear on the curriculum of formal education and in hegemonic media. As I told, Brazil is a large country, but we have at least 53% of African descendants. So people who have black skin and mixed skin. However, it's very hard for the Black population to access education and also to have a good representation in the hegemonic media. Baixada Fluminense also has a lot of Black people living there. Afro-diasporas also to bring together university, independent researchers, students, members of social movements or collectives and other stakeholders from Rio de Janeiro community. So we focus some issues like Black feminism, Black women, cultural production, visual and audiovisual culture with Black agents as protagonists. So it's a lot of issues like you can see here, schooling process of Black population, because we try to show the students that Black people also build the knowledge in the country. In 2015, when I start work in the FEBEF, is the nickname of the School of Education from Baixada Fluminense, we call FEBEF in Duque de Caxias. So students from FEBEF are mostly mixed. And also we have white students, of course, but what happened? In 2015, when I started work there, other Black professors were hired too. So in that moment, we became maybe 10 Black professors among 65 white professors. So when these people, Black people, arrived in university, the Black students became really happy. So I remember that some of them came to me to say, you are the first Black professor that I have. So I would like so much to study with you and to learn. So this is very important to show, to tell. On the left side in this slide, you can see Periferia. This is the FEBEF journal. And this number specifically from was edited in 2018, was about our conference, Women Leading Education from Margins to Centers. So what are our research questions? Considering that leadership in education is not a regular concept in the teacher education studies, and including a decolonial approach contesting the productions of Eurocentric epistemologies, how would it be possible to understand and define the Black leadership in education inside a peripheral and unequal context? Who can be considered a leader in education? And when we decided to interview some women, we asked, do you consider yourself a leader? Why? Now, I would like to show you some representation that these representations have inspired our work. On the left, you can see Anansi, a spider. Anansi is a myth, an African myth, and also in South American countries where Black people were also worked as slaves too. So Anansi is the owner of stories. This spider has the power to tell stories and also to solve problems. It is the owner of the wisdom the wisdom that belongs to the stories. Other symbol is the Adinkra, is a sankofa, a bird scratching its back. Why? Because we need to learn with the past to understand the present and to build a better future. In the middle, you have a beautiful painting. The name is Exu Dambala. In the some people in Brazil don't understand African Brazilian religion, but it's important to say that Exu is a god, African god, who is the first in the big pantheon of goddesses. And he is the one who communicates, who does the mediation between the Olorum, we can say, the big god, and the people. So this mediation is the communication. On the left, other representation of Exu. I have to say the names of the paintings. Exu Dambala, the middle, was painted by Abdias do Nascimento, who was an important Black activist. He was intellectual, economist, senator of Brazil, and he fought a lot against racism. He wrote a lot of books and created in the 40s the theater. Imagine if nowadays we have a strong racism. In the 40s, the racism was also very hard in Brazil. So Abdias created a theater, a Black theater. The other painting on the left was belongs to Zulmira Gomes Leite, my mom. She was a painting. She died 2 years ago, and she was a leader in education. She was a very Catholic person and activist in the church, and at the same time, she was an activist teaching African Brazilian, not history, but African Brazilian myth, because she painting a lot of African goddesses and gods. Some Black authors. As I told you, when the Black professors arrived in FEBEF, and the College of Education of Baixada Fluminense, we also changed the curriculum. Why? Because only white authors were employed in the courses. So it's very difficult in Brazil, and especially in the higher education, you don't have African Brazilian culture. You don't have the points of view of Black authors. So in Afro diasporas, we start to read these authors and also to use them to the courses in order to understand how we can also talk to the women, the regular women on the streets and in their work. So some of these authors are known internationally, other not. So bell hooks, because She studies Black intellectuals, Black women intellectuals. In Brazil, Professor Maria Cida Bento, who works about whiteness, the activist, a very famous, very important philosopher, Sueli Carneiro, who also writes about Black women in movement. Professor Patricia Hill Collins, African American, because she defines self-definition and also self-evaluation. Her articles are very interesting for us too. Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, because she defines intersectionality, very important when you live in a country with a lot of disparities like Brazil. So you have class, gender, and race and ethnicity disparities. We also work with Angela Davis because the intersectionality too. Professor Zélia Amador de Deus is Brazilian. She works in the middle of the country in the state of Pará. She wrote a beautiful PhD dissertation years ago doing comparison between Black movement and Anansi stories. So she says that when Black movement promote advocacy, when Black movement promote develop public policies, it's a kind of wisdom fighting against especially the capitalism roles who affect our lives. Professor Conceição Evaristo, very important writer. Lélia Gonzalez, she was a very important Black feminist. I would like ask a license to read what Lélia told years ago. Lélia died in 1994. Lélia, during the 80s, she produced a lot of articles. So in the moment, during the 80s, feminism in Brazil primarily was addressed challenges to the white women. In fact, this feminism reproduced an unequal speech about work and sexuality. White feminists considered Black women to have an aggressive behavior and also an emotional behavior. So Lélia Gonzalez wrote an article criticizing the manifested resistance of white feminists in the acceptance to agree with the Black feminists. And she wrote, "It's possible to be emotional when we have another reason, when we have a new reason." So Lélia is nowadays maybe an icon because she had her production
Rosa,
erased.
Rosa, we have 5 minutes more.
Okay, thank you. She had her production erased. So Lélia is very important. Other authors, Professor Quilomba, because the decolonial speech, Professor Sarah Lightfoot, who works about portraiture. It's very interesting when we talk about teaching education. The poetry and also writer Audre Lorde about female thinking. Myself, Rosangela Malachias, because I work with edu-communication and advocacy in the Black movement's actions. Beatriz Nascimento, I am Atlântica. Djamila Ribeiro, because the anti-racist speech, and Professor Petronilia Beatriz Gonçalves. You can see here two on a spiral. Why? Because the spiral is other way to look the time. Other AQRA symbol is the interdependence. Concern means ethic and interdependence. So we cannot erase men, and also we don't want to do this, and also we cannot erase white authors. So we have these authors here. I would like to talk about three of them. Steve Biko, South African, who defined Black consciousness. Frantz Fanon, because the criticism to the colonialism. Professor Kabengele Munanga, African naturalized Brazilian, he writes about racism conception. And the others very important too. Abdias, I already told about him. And Milton Santos, a geographer, and Professor Muniz Sodré. The white men and women, Ubiratan D'Ambrosio, he died 1 month ago. He wrote about transdisciplinary method. Paulo Freire, because the education for freedom. Marlene Libardoni, advocacy concepts. And Linda Barrett Osborne is white. All of them were white and are, because some of them died. Paulo Freire died and D'Ambrosio died, but Libardoni and Osborne are alive. So it's very important for us to work with these authors. And other things important to stress is our research design, because we have three principles. These principles belongs to the curriculum guidelines for ethnic racial education, teaching of Afro-Brazilian and African history and culture. During maybe 30 years, the Black movement in Brazil built policies. So in 2003, we have our first federal legislation that defines as mandatory teaching of African Brazilian history and African history. So what are these three principles? Historical and political awareness of differences, the strengthening of identities and rights, and educational actions to combat racism. These are the mainstream of our projects. The qualitative research, so we need to refuse stereotypes. We work with the interfaces between communication and education. We consider ancestry, motherhood, African Brazilian religion, knowledge, and ownership of the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030 agenda of WIN. Here, three projects that we are doing in this moment: International Pedagogical and Advocacy Dialogues, Women Leaders in Education between the local and the global places. I am professor in the graduate program, the Rural and Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. So there, this is a project and also a course where I met Ellen for the first time. SDG 2, because the hunger, 4, because education, 5, because the gender. And teacher training and anti-racist education between Brazil and South Africa. I am associate researcher, but the coordinator is Professor Rosenilton Silva Oliveira from University of São Paulo, and the other associate researcher is Ellen de Lima Souza from São Paulo Federal University. Here, my colleagues from Afro diasporas, each one has important issues. Professor Edma, health of Black population. She studies health of Black population. Ellen Souza studies childhood and necropolítica. Professor Maria Elizabeth is from WLE group too, and also she is a practitioner in the Department of Education in Mauá City, São Paulo. Professor Gloria Ramos is a mathematics scientist. Professor Luciene Cecilia worked with communication and whiteness. Professor Filomena Bonfim works also with communication, but also she creates a news agency in the university in Minas Gerais state. And Professor Dr. Luzia Lia Ferreira from the south of country, Paraná. She works with cultural public policies. So now I finished. Here some studies that students already done. Sorry. Some students that students finished. Teresa Cristina Balbino, Young Women Leaders in Film Education and Communication. She interviewed Lu Brasil, a filmmaker. Laudileia Laudino, Black Deaf People and Double Difference. Miriam Conceição, Young Black Women at YouTube. And Lucélia Ananzi, Black Literature in Early Childhood Education. Now, it's the Ellen Anizsewnski time. Sorry, because sometimes I have to think and try to explain my thought to you. Sorry, but I like so much to be here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rosa, for your presentation. After this, maybe you can stop sharing, and I will now give the time to Dr. Pavel and also Dr. David. They are going to facilitate the question and answer. But before that, I want to welcome Dr. Jennifer Lewis. She is our panelist for today's event for both Dr. Rosa and for Ellen's presentation. May I say something about Dr. Lewis? She received her PhD from the University of Kansas in USA with emphasis in political communication and leadership. Dr. Lewis is an associate professor and the director of degree programs in the Nazarbayev University Graduate School of Business. She teaches courses in business communication and leadership. And Dr. Lewis joined Nazarbayev University in 2011 as part of the first cohort of Nazarbayev University faculty members to establish the university. Previously, she held positions as chair of the Department of Communication at Nazarbayev University in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences and graduate program director in the Communication Department at Western Kentucky University. Dr. Lewis is a founding co-director of the Consortium of Gender Scholars, for which AQRA is, having linkage with. So I am honored to present to you Dr. Lewis. Dr. Lewis, you are going to ask maybe 3 questions, and then we will entertain questions from our audience.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this wonderful presentation about the work that you are doing. I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing what you have presented and the excellent work that you are doing to further feminist studies, and not only feminist studies, but Black women's studies. And to generate this knowledge that is incredibly valuable, but lacking in the literature on leadership and women in leadership as well. And so this is an area for me in particular that when I moved from the US to Kazakhstan 10 years ago, that I recognized here we were lacking a knowledge of what leadership looks like embedded in a culture outside of a Western culture. And for me, coming in as a Westerner, it's very you know, colonialist of me to come in and teach this literature that lacks knowledge, that's founded in the history of a people, in their cultural background, their experiences, and their knowledge. And so, wow, what you are doing is really important and incredible, not only for Brazil, but then to be able to share that knowledge outside of Brazil to further enlighten many of us who are doing this kind of work, and this research around the world. So bravo to you and to your team, for the work that you are doing. I wanted to just maybe start there and ask you, how do you see the future of your work in this idea of continuing to share this knowledge? So you are obviously generating a lot of new knowledge and new information. You gave us some examples of student work that's been done as well on this topic. So what are your plans to share this knowledge, or to spread this information, to share with others, to continue some of the work? You said one of the purposes of your study is to build knowledge, refusing stereotypes and colonial beliefs that still appear in the curriculum and formal education. So what are you doing to further that, and to move to the next step?
Thank you, Professor Jennifer, for your question. It's very important. Really, my dream is to be only a human being. So I would like so much that one day we can be only human being. The color will be only a detail that people use thought color. What? Why color? Or maybe the same for gender. But this is far to happen. So how we are working? In the first moment, it's like I told you, when Black students look myself and my colleagues, we are only 10 in different departments, but they really change their points of view about what place they can be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I used to say that you don't need to be professor or to have a PhD title, but it's very important that you need to know what do you want for your life, and you can do more. You can also go to other states and to other countries. So some of them couldn't believe in my words. So during the organization of the Brazilian conference, it was very important because I had a lot of undergraduate students working with me, producing knowledge, reading about leadership, reading about Black culture, and also about Baixada Fluminense region and the problems, local problems. So when the July 2017 arrived, that students could see women from 11 countries talking about their problems. This event was a great impact for them. Of course, UERJ, Rio de Janeiro State University, has a lot of international events, but you don't know that UERJ is placed in the we call the south zone, is the best of the city. So we are in the peripheral area. In the peripheral area, we have a lack of public policies. So these students could learn with women from different countries, or men too. So in 2018, it was really easy to have more people studying about social justice and understand their reality. In 2019, I fight a lot and I got support from the main campus, and I took to UK 5 undergraduate students, 4 Black women, 1 white student. So they are undergraduate students, they travel to UK, they talk and they explain their work, research. And nowadays we have 2 of them applying to master degree and 2 others working in the Department of Education in different cities from Baixada Fluminense. And they already told me that they want to come back to university. The work the work that Helen will show you is other example that we can spread what we are doing in the scientific journal. But really, for me, it's more important to have students talking about what they are doing, present in the local conferences and also doing groups. This choice has a power for spreading knowledge. And to finish I don't know if I could answer you, but to finish that, I see new issues. So when we have Black professors, you have also new issues arriving in a white and Eurocentric university. So this is the challenge too, because we are trying to face colonialism position, introducing some decolonial issues, but we know that there is a long way to follow.
That's great. I absolutely agree with you. I was looking at some of your research design that you that you presented, and one thing that stood out to me were these educational actions to combat racism, and how you have positioned methodological tools to help combat racism, and to kind of take on some of those, well, as you mentioned, to deal with the approaches to education, so that the students themselves and those who are engaged in the process in teacher education can really kind of work toward some of that, things like you mentioned, specifically ancestry, orality. And orality is so important because it's something that's often missing from the Western literature, in any field, but then in many non-Western cultures, orality is a significant part of the way that knowledge is transferred, and the way that our own personal beliefs and stereotypes are built, right? The stereotype of who you are as a woman, as a Black woman, as a teacher, a lot of that can come through orality in many non-Western cultures. And so I appreciate the way that you connected that to combat racism as one of the educational actions. And so any insights into how that's helped, and maybe for those who are looking to apply this in their own contexts, what kind of methodological tools you might recommend that they choose to employ.
So, oh, I like this question because the Black movement in Brazil fought a lot to get the new legislation, not new more, because 2003. So, but this legislation is still update. So when we have 3 principles, first one, historical and political awareness about our diversity. I used to work with teachers first, teachers from elementary schools. I do this for maybe 15, no more than 20 years. So we talk to teachers about if they know how Brazil is diverse. So we have native people, we have Black people, we have Europeans and Asian and people from anywhere. So when we have consciousness about our diversity, that it becomes mandatory to learn with others. So I especially used to propose some exercise. For instance, now I am in São Paulo because the pandemic, but okay, you can, sometimes you can talk to teachers, to talk to families from students, Bolivian students or African students from Congo. We have some communities. We have a lot of children who needs, who comes from other people. And in general, teachers do not consider diversity. So it is very interesting because when we give some exercise, the response comes, Rosangela, why I didn't do this before. It was so great to talk to the people. I learned a lot about their culture. So sometimes the bureaucratic situations of schools, also in my opinion, does teachers do only what they have to do because the curriculum, but some of them do not try to change. In the same time, we have also a lot of teachers that look the legislation and they are doing activities. The strengthening of identities is a principle linked to the refusal of stereotypes, because we have a lot of stereotypes about Baixada Fluminense as a place of violence, a place of poor people. So when this exercise I like so much to do with the students, because I ask them, what do you think about Baixada? It's so sad because some of them reproduce the stereotypes. So when they go out to interview people, to see the city, they come back and say, look, my place is really good. I couldn't see. Teresa Balbino, my student, interviewed a young Black filmmaker. She studied in the same university and she decided to produce movies using the mobile phone. And she received some awards. And her main issue is to show how Baixada Fluminense has important work, important people, cultural spaces. The actions, the third principle, educative actions, start, in my opinion, in the position that you have when you need to teach. So my colleagues, white colleagues, understood that in our school, Black authors were not employed. We did a meeting to talk about this. So it's the first action, start with us. So they start to read about and to learn about. On the second moment, we start to talk to students. So it's possible, yes, it's really possible, but it's necessary to have also a political desire to do it. This is a political decision. I don't want to be racist. I don't want to reproduce inequalities and stereotypes. This is a role of an educator.
I think you said it well in that last statement, that this is the role of an educator, that this is part of the value of education and knowledge. So that the more we know, the more that we are, our eyes are opened to a different reality, a different person's reality, the more we can expand and learn ourselves. So thank you for your responses. I don't have any other questions at this point in time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rosa. We have two questions, at least I saw. Oh, we have already 3 questions from our participants. I think we may not be able to cover them all, but at least one. Let's start with the first one. Dr. David, would you like to show us from Rose Henry? So the first question is, yeah, I will read the question, and Dr. David will flash it to the screen. The question is this: in your opinion, has there been an evolution in the participation of Blacks in Brazilian scientific production? Again, in your opinion, has there been an evolution or development in the participation of Black scientists in Brazilian scientific production?
Yes, we can observe some change, but it's so few, so few yet, because look, we have Black professors, and the main universities, public universities, are the main institutions, higher education institutions of the country. So to be professor in a public university, you need to do to follow a lot of steps, to do exams, to be evaluated. So when we have some Black professors working in this space, in general, they already have a production, scientific production, but you need to understand that for years, Black population was outside of universities. So we have a scientific scores that for us nowadays are really hard to achieve. Because I read a call 2 weeks ago. I thought, oh, federal government can give money to some professors. So I read the call and I thought, oh, I can't apply, because you need to have a lot of production that for us who are in the beginning, it's really hard. We have maybe 3 or 4 Black professors. I can tell their names. Professor Walter Silvério from Federal University of São Carlos, São Paulo. We have Professor Petronilia Beatriz Gonçalves, also from Federal University of São Carlos, Professor Kabengele Munanga, maybe 3 or other one who now is in the top of this kind of scores. And we have 100 of new professors arriving nowadays in the institutions. So there is a change, yes, but it is, in my opinion, still low comparing with white people. So
thank you so much.
For indigenous, for native people, worst, because the inclusion of native people, it happens because we have affirmative action, but it's really hard to meet a native professor.
Yes, we have no more time, and we would like to ask you, Doctor, if you can look at Q&A box and answer the question that has not been answered yet. You may just type your answer there. And for those who did not have opportunity to ask question, you can still type it in Q&A box, and we'll take care of it to be answered. So now, Dr. Arceli, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pavel, and thank you to our panelists, Dr. Luis, and of course, Dr. Rosa, for answering the questions, and David too, as our facilitator. It's our pleasure to present the certificate of recognition to Dr. Rosa Angela Malachias for her valuable service as a resource speaker during this event. And we have here our AQRA officers as our signatories. Please accept our heartfelt thanks, Rosa. And I would like to encourage our audience. You see, Rosa here is talking about curriculum, how our curriculum can be enriched in so many ways, how we can decolonize our curriculum. Kindly give yourself time to think about that, how you can apply what you have heard from her presentation in your context. We'll have more about this from Ellen's presentation. So Dr. Rosa, please accept our heartfelt thanks. And I would say that you are doing really a very historic and significant work in empowering your students. I would say that Rosa, in spite of her limitations and challenges, can you imagine her bringing 5 students from Brazil to the UK? In my case, Rosa, I brought only 2. My daughter and 1 student here at IAS. So I think you are doing a wonderful job, and would like to encourage other professors there. Dr. Elizabeth Rayleigh, our speaker last virtual event of AQRA, also said the same thing, that we should inspire those who are coming after us to continue this work, because this is an important work and we cannot finish this in one lifetime. So again, our heartfelt thanks from AQRA. And now it's our pleasure to meet Ellen and Rosa. I will give you the time to introduce her.
It's an honor for me to introduce Ellen Anizsewnski. Ellen was my student. She attended my course, and she is really committed with the social justice. She is PhD student in education from the graduate program in Education, Contemporary Context and Popular Demands at Federal Rural University of Rio de Janeiro, in the line of Research, Contemporary Studies and Educational Praxis, Master in Education from the same university. Helen earned her undergraduate program in physical from Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in 2003. She is substitute professor in the city, and also she is an assistant professor at Estácio de Sá University, UNESA. She is a researcher connected with the research group on pedagogy of physical education and sport at Department of Physical Education in Rural University. Specialist professor in bodybuilding and strength training at Gama Filho University, and full teacher for the municipality of Rio de Janeiro and also the state government. Her research interest is in learning environments. I would like to say that Helen is also a digital influencer. She has a program in the Instagram, very good space for her work. Helen, please. I will share for you. Do you want?
Yes, please. Good evening, everyone. Good morning here in Brazil. I'm not a digital influencer at all. Please. I'd like to say, first of all, I'd like to say that it's an honor to be here this evening. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to be talking to you. And I'd like to remember that English is my not native language. And my English is not as good as Rosangela's English. So, but I'll do my best to be understood. As Rosangela said, I am Anizsewnski. I am a PhD student. I am a mother. I am a teacher in elementary and high school, on public school for more 20 years at least. So this evening, I am going to share with you our research named Pedagogical Dialogues on Black Female Leadership between the Terreiro and the School. Please, Rosangela.
Rosa, next slide.
Yes, I don't know why it is not going. Wait. Something happened.
Would you like me to share?
You?
Yeah.
No. Oh, if you have it with you?
Yeah, I have it ready.
Please.
Okay, so stop sharing.
Stop share.
Mm-hmm.
He is stuck. I don't know why it's stuck.
Okay, no worries.
Sorry, Ellen. Stuck
Okay.
For a while. I'll just go down, Ellen. So
down.
Yep. Okay. We are here. No, that's it. Okay. Here. All right.
Yeah.
This one.
So it's challenging to talk after Rosangela. So I'm a little bit nervous. But let's talk about our sample and sampling procedure. We are going to talk about Ilka Valéria dos Santos, and she is in the audience this evening. And Ilka was chosen because of her commitment with the school and the local community. So this research shows aspects of a Black female leadership historian and saint's mom, a priestess, Ilka Valéria dos Santos. sense, Mom. It's how he put that term in English, but she is a religious leader. And she acts in a terreiro. Terreiro is an African Brazilian religious space. So I hope I could explain to you what is a terreiro. It's a religious space. As data collection methods, we followed an agreement between both sides. And so I sent her questions by WhatsApp because Ilka has a lot of issues and work. So we agreed to use WhatsApp, and we found in ethnography our support to do this kind of data collection. And the interviewee's responses were written by herself. We are going to talk about it again during the presentation. You can go next, please. So as a data analysis framework, the first topic is connected to the last one, so that Ilka's choices led to an understanding of the exercise of leadership in paradoxical instances. So we could find some aspects of leadership that are similar in both spaces, in a religion, environment, and public school. We found that ancestry learning in the religious space. Ilka was raised in a family that her grandmother and her mother were leaders, were religious leaders. So we could see that are some aspects of her family that raised her to be a leader. And we saw that Ilka, as a teacher, she used literature at school to inspire her students on reading and writing. That's why the community chose her to give the name to the school's library. So our school library has her name because she did a great work with her students, inspiring them to read and write. Next, please. We considered a decolonial approach, so we can say that this research is not neutral. I already knew Ilka. We were co-workers at school, so I recognized her as a leader. As a teacher, I recognized her as a great leader on that community and on that school, in the school environment. And responses were written by the interviewee because Ilka is a writer, and we use this as a method to give her space to respond, to give her answers as a poetry report. We're going to see that, a little piece of that here in my presentation. And we did this work because we believe that listening to professional experiences is one of the necessary steps to carry out pedagogical dialogues as a way to identify and recognize women leaders in education. Next, please. About ethical considerations, we did 2 slides because one of them are about research, technical informations. So the interviewer and the interviewee work in the same school, in the same place. That's why we can say we use a decolonial perspective. And this fact helped the identification of the interviewee as a respected leader. And that's why I said that this research was not neutral in sample and sampling procedure. The interviewee agreed to answer about educational and religious leadership. Next, please. About ethical considerations, we must say in the context of the research, as a course requirement, we use self-definition taught by Collins. It's necessary because of the context. So I am a white woman, the interviewer, who would listen to a Black woman. And it is mandatory. It was mandatory the adoption of an ethical procedure exercising an anti-racist standpoint. Next, please. I am doing my presentation a little faster because I think I don't have much time. So as findings and discussions, we could find that ILCA's leadership occurs at a paradoxical instances, both in religious centers and public school environment. There is a coexistence of learning. So as well as ILCA had, was raised in a family of leaders, of women leaders. She had a formal education that complement her leadership, aspects of her leadership. So, and she uses it both in the ancestry culture, in her religious space, and at school in a formal education. We must say that we had a critical conception in times of recurrent intolerance against African origin religions in different cities of Rio de Janeiro state. There are a lot of cases of violence against African origins spaces, religion spaces. So it's important to talk about it and to identify this religion, this culture as a living culture, as a part of our history. Miss Ilka Valéria dos Santos composed a poem defining leadership. I'm going to read a little piece of it, but the full text is available on our article that Rosangela said we published last year. So, defining leadership by Ilka Valéria dos Santos. Leading is being light, a point of balance that makes the fragile person to face her fate. Leading makes the strong person to feel a moment of relief, having consciousness of being an uncompleted piece. A leader is one who arms herself with resistance in the midst of the fire of conflict. A leader is one who despises fear in order to overcome challenges. So that's why we could not use another data collection methods and don't let Ilka to give us a poetry report explaining how she sees leadership. Next, please. As conclusions, this empirical study concluded that the identification of Black female as a leadership inside a religious environment, and mainly in the school environment, constitutes the recognition of Black women's lives, their knowledge as an exercise in break up racist stereotypes which dehumanize and reduce them into objectification and or invisibility. So down here we have our article. It was published in Interface da Educação. So you can, it is available in the internet and we can send to you. Next, please. After this research, we recommend that it is mandatory to read about and understand white supremacy and take a changing position, adopting anti-racist attitude, mainly as teachers. We have to talk about these. I think that is our first step to recognize white supremacy and whiteness privileges. So that's why I am here to talk about it. And we have to avoid stereotypes learning with African Brazilian religion as a living culture. Next, please. Here are some Black women authors that we used to compose our research. So from Luisa Bairros, we used friendship between study members. So we use her work to compose our tests and our research because we have a not neutral perspective about sample choices. From Djamila Ribeiro, we used speak in place concept and the recognition of privileges of whiteness. From Makota Valdina, we used approximations between religious centers and school in a way of breaking with ways of thinking. And from Giovanna Xavier, we had a perspective that Black women have to be an object of their selves and not an object of research. So these tests, these authors inspired us in our methodological choices. We used white author, white author, Kozinets, that talks about ethnography. So I appreciate my time. It was faster than I thought. And I am available to give you. And I ask Rosangela to help me, please, to answer the questions because it's my first English presentation. So I am very nervous.
You did a great job, Ellen. Thank you so much. Our time, Dr. Pavel, is, I think we can have like 10 minutes for the question and answer. Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. We have, I'm not sure if this question was answered. I think not yet. From Rodney Banas. The question was regarding, yes, thank you so much. Now we can see it in the screen. Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Malachias. In your study, have you considered early mental modeling to the young generation as a means of communicating equal feminist rights or racial injustice in general at your context or to other countries? So this is a question about the younger generation.
Rosa, are you there? Rosa, this question is for you.
Sorry. So I thought that you would read all the questions and answer once, but
yeah,
okay,
we will answer one by one. So
one by one. Yes, I have considered it's very interesting to talk about this because when we work with teaching of not teaching, but updating public teachers. We have a special course for the childhood education. So we work with childhood education, and we also talk about how we can deconstruct. Would be
Yes, that's the right word.
Stereotypes on media and also in the literature. It's very common. You have the portrayal of these Black children in the bad way, but we offer new opportunities of reading for these teachers. But nowadays we have a hard influence from internet. So what I can tell you is, first, we used to talk to the teachers and also with the students about how long the children stay in the internet. What are the other opportunities that these children have to learn? So during a research made by Teresa with the filmmaker Lu Brasil, she also interviewed young people in Baixada Fluminense who promote some workshops directed to small children, and these small children can use their phones to produce movies, but with different contents that we used to see in the hegemonic media. So there we have to consider, of course, how especially some values are spread in the media, but educommunication concept help us to have steps doing media literacy, doing planning in the schools, identifying ecosystems of communication, understanding that communication is a step to education. So the edu-communication process is a very interesting concept to help the teaching of the young generation, and also to observe how we have how can we deal with these contents. But in the good way, we also have a lot of young people, Black young people in the internet doing good job, talking against racism, talking about beauty, Black hair. So we have also good contents, and the children and the youngsters are attending these kind of messages.
Thank you so much. This is very interesting. Indeed, the internet now is a great tool for education and for developing research in different areas, including this area. We have another question for you from now, Teen. What are the problems of the woman leadership in education? How will your research help the woman leadership in education?
I can answer one piece of this question. Maybe Helen can complete. When we have women in formal education, you have a mom, a worker, community member. So some questions and challenges linked to the female life are a challenge, because you have to do a lot of work. So it is common, you see some women that could have a high position, but some of them decided don't accept this kind of position because they need to take care of their families, and some of them have issues with the husband also. So it is a way to see this question. Other way that I like more, maybe in Brazil, you can identify in the protagonism or some teachers who follows what Paulo Freire calls of autonomy as steps to leadership. But I told in the beginning, the Brazilian literature linked to this issue, it's completely different from the United States and the other countries. So women leadership in business, administration, or religion, but in education, no. We have, of course, we have courses for the managers, people who are who will do administrative work in the schools. But the idea of leadership, we have identified in non-formal education, in the communities, non-governmental organizations, and internet space is common to identify this kind of woman. So when Ellen met Ilka, was really interesting because Ilka received recognition from community, students, parents, and teachers look her like a leader.
Dr. Pavel, we have 3 minutes. Oh no, 1 minute more.
Sure. We have one more question. Maybe this would be a shorter one to Ellen. Ellen, you have been a long time primary school teacher. How do you assess the activism of Black teachers aiming to effectively make Black culture, excuse me, count in the curriculum and teaching learning process in Brazil? It's a very practical one. How would you reflect on that?
I'll try to answer that. I see that is there is a movement from some teachers, but it's far away from the ideal. We can put these issues on discussion in events and at school, so we can put these subjects and in the curriculum and effectively make this work at school. So I think there is a movement from some teachers, but it's far away from the ideal. So that's why it's important to discuss about it and to discuss about it recognizing whiteness privileges. I don't know if I could answer that, but I think it is in that way.
Sure. Thank you so much.
I think we should give Dr. Lewis even just one question. She can ask just one question. Yeah, Dr. Lewis, would you like?
Yes.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ellen, for your presentation and for your unique contribution to the literature, to specifically highlighting a female leader who was recognized, a grassroots leader who was recognized from the ground up by her peers, by those around her. And it's so important for us to highlight that, because connecting it to what Rosangela was saying, it's important to have examples. It's important that we see ourselves in potential leaders, and so I think that's really special that you did that, and that you focused on how you can break this racist stereotype by presenting an exemplar leader. How would you encourage other women in her type of position to do the same thing, to kind of take it upon themselves to develop into a leader, not necessarily with the goal of being recognized as a leader, but of supporting and encouraging other young people to develop themselves?
It's a really nice question. So I will answer giving my example. I am a teacher for more than 20 years, and I didn't use to concern about it, to worry about it. So when my students came to me and said, "Hi, teacher, you look like a princess. Oh, your hair is nice." And I looked at them, and they were Black, and they had Black power hair. And I didn't know that at that time I could do something different from being quiet. And now I know that as a teacher, I can do something to tell them that they are beautiful, they are powerful. And I'm sorry about it, because it's some kind of guilty, but it's some kind of thankful for being, to woke up for this issue, because I can make a difference in little moments with my student. I should, maybe these days, I could tell them, my hair is nice and your hair is nice too. Your hair is your crown. Your hair has history, has power. So at the time, I didn't know I should do that. I didn't know, because I didn't had contact with women like Rosangela and other inspiring women. So I think we could tell them, as to my child, to my student, to my peers, to my peers.
Mhm. That's right.
I can. It's more difficult, because they have already their thoughts and their way of thinking, and it's a little bit difficult to do that. But I listen, I listen, I listen, I learn, I admire their history, their way, their struggle, and I listen. I think it's a good point. Listen.
Yes.
And learn.
Right. So by learning, you became empowered, and now you can empower others. And that's the brilliance of the educational process, isn't it? Well, congratulations on your article being published. Best of luck as you continue to pursue your PhD.
Okay, thank you so much. We're done with our question and answer. Now, we are very pleased to present the certificate of recognition to Ellen for being our resource speaker today. I would like to encourage our other participants here, our audience, that we take inspiration from our experience with Rosa and with Ellen today. Share your work and be bold and bless others. So Ellen, thank you so much. And now we would like to also give the certificate of recognition to Jennifer Lewis. Dr. Lewis, thanks a lot for consenting to be our guest panelist today. Your questions have deepened our understanding on the issues, and we would like to say that AQRA is very pleased to collaborate with the consortium on consortium of gender scholars in Kazakhstan. So keep up the work also. And of course, to Rosa and Ellen, yes, continue your work. We have been inspired today.